In the tip box, it say that it's a good idea for us to pay attention to our mistakes, our common mistake. And that means if you make the same mistake again and again, you need to pay attention to it in order to improve your grammatical range and accuracy score. So, in order to do that, you also need to have a systems of mistakes. When you take a look again at your mistakes in the piece of writing, you need to try to categorize those mistakes. Is it belong to the tenses, or is it because of singular, plural, countable, and uncountable noun? I think that one of the very common mistakes is with articles, especially for Vietnamese people, which sometimes mix it up for the use of an, and the, right? And next one is active and passive voice. There are some places that it is recommended that you use passive voice. However, in some other situations, it is better to use the active voice. So, how can you decide if you should want to use the active voice or the passive voice? The reason is, which one do you want to focus? If you want to focus on anything, you put it as the subject. So think about it, then you have the right answer for this. So for number 5, the mistake of subject-verb agreement. As I told you, we do not have a change in our language. That is the reason why it can be a very common mistake that the examiner will notice and they will look for this mistake from you. For number 6, we'll talk about punctuations and capital letters. I think it's not too a big deal for Vietnamese people, the capital letters. However, for punctuation, I think that many of us has trouble. You sometimes write a very, very long sentence, like super runny sentence, but then you cannot find any like comma or full stops. Can you really be able to read that if you have to read it aloud? So think about this. When you finish a thought group, you need to have a comma, and if you want to start a new sentence, full stop before you start a new sentence. Next one, for number prepositions. I think that it is quite common as well. Sometimes people mix it up, but it's not as previous. It is not as serious as the previous mistake. For number 8, we'll have comparative and superlative. So for comparative, sometimes I think that one of the very common mistake is that you mix up simple comparative, the short adjective with the long adjective. Sometimes you say more quieter than. You use like a double comparative. This is no good. So please pay attention to that. And also we have some special words like good become better, worst become worse, things like that. You should try to keep in mind. And for the superlative, the most common mistake that I gather throughout my learning experience is that you tend to forget the, right, a lot. So pay attention to that and take a look. Shall we take a look together? So for the mistakes here, for the tenses, you can see it's are using, right? This one here, are using, and was never assessed. For singular countable, it can be like social medias, or categories or citizens, right? So for articles, it can be like fluency regular, on a regular basis, right? And then the highest, okay, the majority. And then for number 4, passive and active, like was never assessed or was select or used. For number 5, you can have the mistake like the pie chart shows the subject verb agreement, a don't. In the US, they cannot the student cannot the writer cannot identify the real subject, adults, right? And then those who sometimes finds majority of citizens. for number 6, we'll have the punctuation in the US as well. US response and equal. Equal is quite clear. For the next one, preposition in, right, and then how it gets from, by the data, things like that. And for number 8, we can have the, how it gets, right, 12% less or less common response. So pay attention to these groups of errors. Do you make any kind of errors belong to these groups? I think that you need to pay attention to number 5, subject-verb agreement, and number 2, singular, plurals, and countable, and the tenses as well. So I think that this is the top 3 mistakes that you groups of mistakes that students often make. In activity number 11, can you please read the following pairs of sentences and decide which one would score higher in the grammatical range and accuracy criteria? Please take a look. Okay, so for number 1, which one do you think? I think that sentence A will sound much more natural, even though sentence B is the passive voice. It is grammatically possible, but it feels very unnatural. And also in the intro, you want something that more direct, right? And you still want to focus on the pie chart, not social media. For number 2, sentence B is much better. One thing that can be seen from the data is that some media sources are less popular than 20 years ago. So for sentence B right here, using we in one thing we can see will have a very informal feelings, right? Remember, if you want to have a better score, you should try to avoid using I and we. Using the passive here give a more objective tone and therefore will earn a better score. For number 3, sentence 8 is much more natural. The number of online newspaper subscriptions has increased by 20% since 2005. So, sentence B gives the impressions that somebody made the number of subscription increase, right? We don't usually use the verb increase or decrease in the passive voice. So, please remember that. A will be much better. For sentence number 4, sentence A is much more natural. If you don't remember the reasons, then take a look at sentence 1. Let me remind you, this is the intro, so it's better to be direct. For sentence number 5, sentence B will be much better because sentence A will give the impressions that somebody doubled the number, right? Look at this one. Between 2005 and 2015, the proportions of over 40s using online news site was almost double. It is not true, right? It simply increased. So please remember to use the active voice for these kind of verbs. I hope that you remember this. For the next type, let's take a look at the exam skills. In this part here, you are going to try to analyze the pie charts. We have 2 pie charts here, and the pie chart shows the first place Germans and Nigerians go in order to assess the news in a typical week. This one is pretty similar to the one that we've just looked at before. It talked about the 2 countries, right? So this one is for Germany and this one is for Nigeria. And we have TV, newspaper, radio, internet, and other sources. I think that you can do well for this. Remember to follow the step. First, please analyze what is the two pie charts about. Then try to select some key features from the body. After you have everything, please write the intro. Paraphrase this sentence here. Now, can you write the overview? Remember, the overview should be the main points or the main idea of these two. So maybe you can say that the top one, like the most popular way to get the news for Germans is from newspaper, while that of Nigerians is from the TV. And other sources and internet, other sources is the least popular one. Okay, so for the main points, can you try to divide it into two body paragraphs? When you finished, can you check it again? Do you use fractions in your writing? How about percentages? Do you use both types? If yes, then very good. Now, double check any mistakes related to grammatical range and accuracy criteria. Do you make any mistake in tenses, subject-verb agreements? Alright, so when you finish, then very well done. If you like to challenge yourself a little bit, you can try to time yourself, maybe say in 20 minutes, and write it again. Let's see if you can finish or complete an effective essay. Good luck. Alright, in our very last part here, unit reflect. Remember to answer these questions in your portfolio. Question number 1. How can you improve your grammatical range and accuracy score? Question number 2. What are some other ways to describe percentages instead of using numbers? Question 3. Can you complete the short essays for exam skill task? Thank you so much for joining me today. I will see you in the next unit. Goodbye!